And that's nifty because whenever we're going to want, for instance, if we want to bring in our 4 scepters of Fouge from our sideboard, then we really want to cast it on turn 2. This is Scepter of Fouge is a callback to the card, a card that was a very important card. It was actually in the Keeper back in the day, and an important card in the history of Magic called Disrupting Scepter. And it was a 3 colorless casting cost artifact. And for 3 colorless mana, you could kind of get the same effect. Target player discards a card. Play this only during your turn. And this is actually a card that I sort of championed during our playtesting. I thought it was going to be very important for us. And it's something that really gives us a devastator against 5-color control, which it turned out there was a huge number of 5-color control decks in this format. So we really needed something against them. And between the 5-color control decks and the fairy decks that are out there, we really wanted to have Scepter of Fouge. But the key is that we want to be able to cast it on turn 2. So we've got 11 lands that come into play tapped, these various vivid lands. Certainly you can play one of those on turn 1, but we wanted to have a bunch of lands that both came into play untapped and that would produce black mana. Well, against both 5-color control, and by the way, most non-keeper decks, and that's why it's important to draw a distinction. This isn't just your mama's 5-color control deck here. This is the keeper. You know, we really worked on this one, refined it, and once again, well, okay, I guess, shoot. You know, now that I say that, we are 5 colors because we've got this Broodmate Dragon. He's sort of leering at me. He's got a little bit of green. He slid 3 green dots into the deck. But this is a different deck. It's a different deck than what the other guys are playing in the other deck lists that you're going to see. Obviously, others learned from the decks that we played at Nationals and at Worlds. But again, we're not playing the Cloud Threshers and so forth anymore. Okay, Exotic Orchard against... so the point is that Exotic Orchard will produce black mana typically by turn 2, both against fairies and against 5-color control. And so what that allows us to do is have 10 lands that come into play untapped and produce black mana to be able to land that turn 2 Scepter of Fouge. And that's going to, sort of instantly help us turn the corner against any control deck. I don't know. I don't think we need it against Boat Brew. Maybe they bring in 1 or 2 against Boat Brew, but I just doubt it. They probably just don't bother. But yeah, those are 2 of the major decks in the field. Probably, I believe, the number 2 and the number 3 overall decks in the field in terms of the number of players that played them from the giddy up. And we really want to have something from Jump Street that really helps us, put the lockdown on these guys, because otherwise, these matchups can, get out of control in a hurry. So that's something that's interesting about the mana base, is that we really wanted to. We want to be able to, support this Cruel Ultimatum. It's a very, very important card. It's kind of a game winner. That gives you an idea about, how we're working our mana, though. As I'm going to pop back over to, here we go, Wizards, and, take one more look at the land count. We have 27 lands. During testing, it was very tricky because we'd run through 20 game sets with 26 lands and feel like we wanted a 27th land, and we'd run through 20 matches with 27 lands and feel like we wanted 26. And so the solution we came up with, and this is fine, by the way, it's just not the end of the world to do this. We decided to ultimately go with a 61 card deck, and obviously it worked out very well. I'm not saying that was necessarily the right pick or necessarily the wrong pick, but it is the pick that the guys made, and they stuck with it, and obviously it worked out very well for Gabriel. Okay, so we've kind of taken a top-down look in terms of, really what we're doing with this deck is having this nifty mana base that between 11 vivid lands and these various other things like our Exotic Orchards are going to give us, they're going to give us red and white against red-white decks, of course, going to give us black-white against black-white decks and so on. So they're giving us a nice range of mana. We're getting a lot of, range in our mana supply from all these vivid lands. Those are all going to work out really well with the Reflecting Pool. And then we've got these nifty filter lands to sort of bring everything together. And of course, 3 islands, and that's because of Path to Exile. Want to make sure that we have lands to go and get when folks take out our walls with Path to Exile. Okay, I'm going to pop back over to Magic Online here. And now what I want to do is kind of look at the heart of the matter when it comes to this deck. So we've already kind of taken an overview, and the idea here is that we're going to have a mana base that's going to allow us to support a bunch of different kinds of cards, what we consider to be the most important cards of the format. And now let's take a look at what are the cards that are really making this deck worthwhile. What is it? Why are we doing this? Why are we playing a deck with 5 colors rather than playing 4, 3, 2, or a monocolor deck where we're going to get more consistency out of our lands and get to do stuff like play with Mutavaults and other nifty stuff? Well, the primary reason why is this card, Cryptic Command. And of course the card text isn't right here, but if you're familiar with Standard Magic, you're familiar with this card. It allows us to choose 2 of the following. It allows us to counterspell a card, draw a card, return a permanent to its owner's hand, or to tap all of a target player's creatures. And we get to do 2 of those at once as an instant for 3 blue and a colorless. So we can, for instance, counter spell our opponent's card and draw a card, and that's a nice value. And it gives us a lot when we're playing control decks. One of the things we learned all the way back in 1995 and 1996 when David Mills was first innovating the Keeper, is that when we're playing a deck where we're kind of trying to control our opponent and match up with them, then we want to have flexibility. Flexibility then becomes very, very important. And that's one of the nifty things that we did with this deck. We'll get to that more in a second. But Cryptic Command is a card that really helps us match up against folks. I actually think that Cryptic Command is better in our deck even than Fairies. And Fairies is just an awesome deck, obviously. But in a sense, we kind of get, I think, a bit more mileage out of Cryptic Command. It doesn't really matter particularly much. But this deck really is going to take advantage of Cryptic Command. It's the most important card in this deck. It is the reason for this deck. It's the one thing that kind of made us nervous about playing 61 cards instead of playing 60 cards, is that we really want to draw a bit more of Cryptic Command. But anyway, once again, you can only take things a bit so seriously. Obviously having 61 cards is not the end of the world. The only other 4 ofs in this deck, and those are going to be kind of help us round out the heart of the matter. And I'm going to talk about our breakers in a second. But we also have these nifty Esper Charms. And once again, this is great because, much like the Cryptic Command, Esper Charm is going to lead to a bunch of opportunities. We can, of course, the normal thing that we're going to do with it is draw cards. We can kill Glorious Anthem and Bitter Blossom and other enchantments with it. And we can, of course, make our opponent discard cards, which can be nice. In a sense, it can kind of act like a bit of a counter a card, draw a card, because we can, as an instant, clear our opponent's hand after they go up, during their draw step, if they only have 1 card in their hand before the draw step, and if they draw a card then and they only have 2 cards in our hand, we can then Esper Charm them, and boom, unless they have an instant to cast, they're kind of locked out of their turn, and that can be nifty. So we get a lot of versatility out of Esper Charm, especially the card drawing and the enchantment kill. And we also have this nifty card, Mole Drifter, and he's also a nice versatile card where he's going to get us cards, keep our card drawing engine going. He can also just be a 2/2 flyer for us in addition to getting us those 2 cards, and we get a little bit of extra mileage out of him with our Cruel Ultimatum, where we can return him to our hand. Also, he can help power our Wall of Reverences a little bit, but I'll get to that in a second, in terms of giving us a little bit bigger of a creature to give us more life. Now, so like I said, we've got these card drawing cards and this Cryptic Command that's creating kind of, there's one more 4 of in the deck. We also have these 4 Broken Ambitions. And the point of the Broken Ambitions is that we really wanted to match up well with Fairies. And we wanted a little bit better of a matchup against Boat Brew. And Broken Ambitions against Fairies is obviously critical. It allows us to stop Mistbound Click before it ever hits. A lot of times it'll allow us to catch a Bitter Blossom if we're on the play. Kind of counter that, and just gives us more counter power. And against Boat Brew, what it's going to allow us to do is take out the really scary cards like Revlark, Ajani Vengeant. It's going to allow us oftentimes to counter Spectral Procession even if we're going second, and it'll help us stop Siege Gang Commander. And a lot of these cards, we don't even want them to hit play. We don't want them to hit play and then to kill them, because they can have their a positive effect on the game right away. Obviously, Siege Gang Commander, the second it hits, it creates 3 tokens. Revlark, once it hits, now if it leads to play, that triggers its ability. With the Ajani Vengeant, obviously you can trigger one of his abilities right away. So we want to be able to to kind of shut things down before they happen. So that's one of the reasons we play Broken Ambitions.